Hello, Mark. My name is William, and I'm in sophomore speaking and listening class. My student number is 24. Today, I'm going to talk about life-saving scientific tools made of paper by Manu, Prakash. So, I love making tools and sharing them with people. I remember as a child, my first tool I built was actually a microscope that I built by stealing lenses from my brother's eyeglasses. He wasn't that thrilled, but maybe because of that moment, 30 years later, I'm still making microscopes. And the reason I built these tools is for moments like these. Video, girl, I have a black things in my hair. Manu, Prakash. This is a school in the Bay Area. Video, MP. The living world far suppresses our imagination of how things actually work. Video, boy, oh my god. MP writes, oh my god, I hadn't realized this would be such a universal phrase. Over the last 2 years in my lab, we've built 50,000 photoscopes and shipped them to 130 countries in the world, and no cost to the kids we send them to. This year alone, with the support of our community, we are planning to ship 1 million microscopes to kids around the world. What does that do? It creates an inspiring community of people around the world, learning and teaching each other from Kenya to Kampala to Kathmandu and Kansas. And one of the phenomenal things that I love about this is the sense of community. There's a kid in Nicaragua teaching others how to identify mosquito species that carry dengue by looking at the larvae under a microscope. There's a pharmacologist who came up with a new way to detect fake drugs anywhere. There's a girl who wondered how does glitter actually work and discovered the physics of crystalline formation in glitter. There is an Argentinian doctor who's trying to field cervical cancer screening with this tool, and our very truly found a species of flea that was dug inside my heel in my foot 1 centimeter deep. Now you might think of this as anomalies, but there is a method to this madness. I call this frugal science. The idea of sharing the experience of science and not just the information. To remind you, there are 1 billion people on this planet who live with absolutely no infrastructure. No roads, no electricity, and thus no healthcare. Also, there are 1 billion kids on this planet have live in poverty. How are we supposed to inspire them for the next generation of solution makers? There are healthcare workers that we put on the line to fight infectious disease, to protect us with absolutely bare minimum tools and resources. So as a lab at Stanford, I think of this from a context of frugal science and building solutions for these communities. Often we think about being able to do diagnosis under a tree off-grid. I'll tell you 2 examples today of new tools. One of them starts in Uganda. In 2013, on a field trip to detect schistosomiasis with photoscopes, I made a minor observation. In a clinic in a far remote area, I saw a centrifuge being used as a doorstop. I mean, quite literally the doorstop. And I asked them and they said, oh, we don't actually have electricity, so this piece of junk is good as a doorstop. Centrifuges. For some of you who you don't know, are the pinnacle tools to be able to do samples processing. You separate components of blood or body fluids to be able to detect and identify pentagons. But centrifuges are bulky, expensive, cost around $1,000, and really hard to carry out in the field. And of course, they don't work without power. Sound familiar? So we started thinking about solving this problem, and I kept thinking about toys. Now, I have a new field with me here. I first started with yo-yos, and I'm a terrible yo-yo thrower because this object spins. We wonder, could we actually use the physics of this object to be able to build centrifuge? This was possibly the worst throw I could make, but you might start realizing if you start exploring the space of toys. We tried these spinning toys and then in the lab we stumbled upon this wonder. It's a whirling or a buzzer or a rondo, a couple of strings and a little disc. And if I push, it spins. How many of you has played with this as a kid? This is called a button on a string. Okay, maybe 50% of you. What you didn't realize that this little object is the oldest toy in the history of mankind. 5,000 years ago, we have found relics of these objects hidden around our planet. Now the irony is we actually don't understand how this little thing works. That's when I get excited. So we got back to work, wrote down a couple of equations. If you take this input torque that you put in, you take the drag on this disc, and the twist drag on these strings, you should be able to mathematically solve this. This is not the only equation in my talk. 10 pages of math later, we could actually write down a complete analytical solution of this dramatic dynamic system, an outcome that we call paperfuge. That's my postdoc said Bahmala, who's the co-inventor of paperfuge. And to the left, you'll see the centrifuge that we're trying to replace. This little object that you see right here is a disc, a couple of strings and a handle. And then I spin and I push, it starts to spin. Now when you realize, when you do the math, when we calculate the RMP of this object, mathematically we should be able to go all the way to 1,000,000 RMP. Now there is a little twist in human anatomy. Because the resonance frequency of this object is about 10 Hz, and if you ever play in a piano, you can go higher than 2 or 3 Hz. The maximum speed we have able to achieve with this object is not 10,000 RMP, not 50,000 RMP, is 120,000 RMP. That's equal to 30,000 G-force. If I was to stick you right here and have it spin, you would think about the type of force you would experience. One of the factors of a tool like this is to be able to diagnose with this. So I'm going to do a trick demo here, where this is a moment where I'm going to make a little finger prick, and a tiny drop of blood is going to come out. If you don't like blood, you don't have to look at it. Here's a little lancet. These lancets are available everywhere, completely passive. And if I had breakfast today, that didn't hurt at all. Okay, I take a little capillary with a drop of blood. Now this drop of blood has answers. That's why I'm interested in it. It may actually tell me whether I have malaria right now or not. Take a little capillary and you see it start wicking in. I'm going to draw a little more blood, and that's good enough for right now. Now I just seal this capillary by putting it in the clay, and now let's seal and the sample. Let's seal the sample. We're going to take the sample, mount in a paperfuge, a little piece of tape to make a sealed cavity. So now the sample of this completely enclosed, and we are ready for a spin. I'm pushing and pulling with this object. I'm going to load this up, and you see the object start spinning, unlike a regular centrifuge. This is a counter-rotating centrifuge. It goes back and forth, and now I'm charging it up, and you see it builds momentum. And now, I don't know if you can hear this, 30 seconds of this, and I should be able to separate all the blood cells with the plasma. And the ratio of this blood cell to plasma applies. Already, if you see right here, if you focus on this, you should be able to see the separate volume of blood and plasma. And the ratio of that actually tells me whether I be anemic. One of the aspects of this is we build many types of paperfuge. This one allows us to identify malaria parasites by running them for a little longer. And we can identify malaria parasites that are in the blood that we can separate out and detect with something like a centrifuge. Another version of this allows me to separate nucleic acid to be able to do nucleic acid tests out in this field itself. Here is another version that allows me to separate box samples, and then finally something new that we've been working on to be able to implement the entire multiplex text on an object like this. So where you do the samples preparation and the chemistry in the same object. Now this is all good, but when you start thinking about this, you have to share this tool with people. And one of thing we did is we just got back from Madagascar. This is what clinical trials for malaria look like. Laughter. You can do this while having coffee, but most importantly, this is a village 6 hours from any road. We are in a room with one of the senior members of the community and a healthcare worker. It really is the portion of the work that excites me the most. That smile, to be able to share simple but powerful tools with people around the world. Now, I forgot to tell you this. That's all that cost me 20 cents to make. Okay, in the negative time I have left, I'll tell you about the most recent laughter invention from our lab. It's called a buzz. The idea that all of you could help us fight mosquitoes. You could all help us track our enemies. These are enemies because they cause malaria, Zika, chikungunya, dengue. But the challenge is that we actually don't know where our enemies are. The world map of where mosquitoes are is missing. So we started thinking about this. There are 35,000 species, 3,500 species of mosquitoes, and they're all very similar. Some of them are so identical that even an entomologist cannot identify them under a microscope. But they have an Achilles heel. This is what a mosquito flirting with each other looks like. That's a male chasing a female. They actually talking to each other with their wingbeat frequencies, buzzing sound, and thus they have a signature. We realized that using a regular phone, a $5 to $10 flip phone, how many remember that what this object is? Laughter. We can record these acoustic signatures from mosquito. I'll tell you exactly how to do this. I caught some mosquito outside. Unlike Bill Gates, I'm not going to release them, laughter. But I will tell you how to record from this. All you do is tap them when they fly. You can first test, I can actually hear that. And you bring your phone, which has microphones. It turns out that mics are so damn good already, even on regular phones, that you can pick up this near field signature. And since I'm out of mind, let me just play the recording that I made a day ago. Mosquitoes buzz. This is all the charming sound that you heard before that you love. One of the contexts of this that being able to do this with a regular cell phone allows us to map mosquito species. Using a flip phone, we mapped one of the largest acoustic database with 25 to 20 species of mosquitoes that carry human pathogens. And from this and machine learning, anybody who uploads this data can identify and tell the probability of what species of mosquito you are actually working with. We call this a buzz. And if any of you want to sign up, just go to the website. Let me close with something that's very important and near to my heart. One of the challenges of today is we have terrible problems. We have a billion problems with absolutely no healthcare, climate change, biodiversity loss, and on and on and on. And we hope that science is going to provide the answers. But before you leave this theater already, I want you to promise one thing. We're going to make science accessible, not just to the people who can afford it, but a billion others who can. Let's make science and scientific literacy a human right. The moment that you pass the tingling feeling of making a discovery in another child, you're enabling them to be the next group of people who will actually solve these problems. Thank you. Applause.